When you look at Abba from Abba and Preach alongside someone like Fresh and Fit, they appear to be complete opposites on the surface. Abba comes across as analytical, measured, and deliberate in how he delivers his commentary. He's not out here putting people down for sport. He carries himself with a level of humility and accountability that feels genuine, and he tends to be straightforward in how he communicates. Fresh and Fit, and Myron in particular, operate in a completely different way. They say one thing and consistently do another. They've shown time and again that they hold a low regard for black people generally and black women specifically. Meanwhile, Abba openly embraces his Ethiopian heritage. He posted something recently, crediting his brother, talking about the outfit being fire, hashtagging Habasha, which, for those who don't know, is a term that refers to people of Ethiopian and Eritrean descent. It was a genuine, unprompted celebration of where he comes from. You will almost never see Myron or Fresh do anything like that. In fact, the pattern tends to go in the opposite direction. They appear to go out of their way to distance themselves from their blackness, rather than embrace it. But here's where the conversation gets interesting. Someone might ask, what could Abba and Fresh and Fit possibly have in common? Because on the outside, these platforms look nothing alike.
About black women, and to answer that, the reason why I don't date them a lot of the times isn't necessarily because of the way that they look. It's because a lot of the behaviors that's championed in that community.
Here is Myron explaining, in his own words, why he chooses not to date black women. And in this particular clip, he's not focused on physical appearance. He's talking about behavior. According to him, black women are loud, obnoxious, and unwilling to respect male leadership. These are the recurring talking points that Myron and men who share his perspective consistently fall back on when explaining their disdain for black women. And that's just one layer of it, because there's more.
Or a black girl.
Would I rather date a or a black girl? The girl.
Why?
Because the black girl's gonna be fat anyway.
All right.
The average black woman in America is 187 pounds, dude.
In another clip, Myron shifts from behavior to physical appearance, saying he doesn't date black women because of weight. Now, obviously, that broad generalization doesn't reflect reality, but that's the argument he's putting forward. Now, contrast that with Abba. Abba doesn't take shots at black women or black people generally. He's pragmatic in how he approaches things. He leans more progressive than Myron does, both socially and politically. And as we've already established, he openly celebrates his Habesha identity without any hesitation. But here's where this conversation takes an interesting turn. There's a clip circulating on TikTok, an interview where a Filipino woman is openly expressing her attraction to black men, and essentially extending an open invitation for them to visit the Philippines, particularly Cebu. And then another woman echoes the same sentiment. Open arms, she says. On a scale of 1 to 10, she rates black men a 10. When you scroll into the comments section under content like this, you find men from all over, Jamaica, Nigeria, Guinea, all throwing their names in. And here's what's notable. None of these men in the comments expressed any hostility toward black women. They weren't tearing anyone down. They simply saw something they were attracted to and responded to it. But the broader conversation that content like this feeds into is the set of stereotypes that often get attached to Asian women. Submissive, soft-spoken, smaller in frame, more accommodating. And black women in these same circles are positioned as the opposite of all of those things. Keep that in mind because it becomes relevant as we go further. Now, do you remember a few years back when Fresh got exposed by a woman named Daisy Chin? She came forward claiming he had gotten her pregnant. There's an audio recording, someone animated it for social media, where Fresh is heard urging her to take a pill and move on, while she's insisting she wants to keep the baby, citing her religious beliefs. This is the same Fresh who publicly and repeatedly declares he doesn't date black women, being exposed by an Asian woman in front of his entire audience. And Daisy Chin, for context, was reportedly involved in adult content creation. There were also reports that Abba himself had a brief encounter with her when she allegedly approached him as well, but that's a separate story. The point is this: if your whole platform is built around rejecting black women and championing your preferences, your preference probably shouldn't be the one putting your personal life on blast for the world to see. Now let's shift to Abba, because his situation is different, but more revealing than people initially realized. Abba is based in Montreal, Canada.
the city has a black population of roughly 11%.
The restaurant had open tables inside, plenty of available seating, and yet somehow, Tadashi and his group ended up outside, alone, with not a single other person of color anywhere near them. And then, to make matters worse, when his road manager asked the waiter what the messiest, most loaded burger on the menu was, the waiter bypassed the entire burger menu and steered him toward the fried chicken sandwich instead. Let that sink in for a second. His video went viral on TikTok, and once it started gaining traction, Burger Up's social media team slid into his inbox with a response. It read something along the lines of, "We're sorry you had a bad experience. We try to make every guest feel welcome. Thanks for the feedback. We hope you'll give us another chance in the future." That's it. That was the response. Not an acknowledgement of what actually happened, not a word about the racial undertones of the entire experience, just a generic customer service template that essentially said, "Sorry you felt that way. Please come spend your money with us again." He didn't have a bad appetizer. He didn't get a cold burger. What happened to him was qualitatively different, and the restaurant's response deliberately refused to name it for what it was. And this is exactly what Tariq Nasheed was pointing at when he framed the broader conversation. What Chud the Builder does is overt, it's loud, it's public, it's on camera. But what Burger Up did, and what DAs Glenn Funk and Robert Nash are doing by allowing Dayton Etherly to operate without legal consequence, that's the quieter version of the same system at work. Institutional, deniable, and in many ways more dangerous because it hides behind professionalism and procedure. Think about the double standard for a moment. Imagine a black man going around the upscale parts of Nashville on camera, directing racially charged language at white residents, doing it consistently, repeatedly, building a content channel around it. How long before he's arrested? One night, maybe two. Charges would be filed immediately. If he tried to travel internationally, he'd find doors closing in multiple countries. The system would make an example of him without hesitation. But Dayton Etherly, a man with a documented pattern of racially targeted harassment, no significant employment, allegations of being an absent father, and a reported history of losing his legal right to carry a firearm, this man is still out here, still operating, still being handed a pass by the very people whose job it is to protect the public. And here's where the legal reality gets critical. Under the law, you cannot claim self-defense if the other person is retreating. If someone walks away from you and you follow them, close the distance, and dare them to engage again, you are the aggressor. That legal protection disappears the moment you pursue. Etherly either doesn't understand that or doesn't care, because the system hasn't forced him to care yet. The uncomfortable truth that Nasheed is laying out is this: DAs Glenn Funk and Robert Nash know exactly what's happening in their jurisdictions. The only moment they'll move is when allowing this behavior becomes more politically costly than stopping it. That's a damning reality. They should be protecting their communities because it's the right thing to do, not because the optics finally became too expensive to ignore. And this is the message that gets lost when people assume that personal success equals personal safety. You can have the degree, you can have the income, your kids can attend Vanderbilt or Meharry Medical College, and none of that changes the fundamental imbalance in how the system responds to you versus how it responds to someone like Dayton Etherly. The black police officers who stood there and absorbed his harassment while staying professional, they understand this better than anyone. They know exactly what would happen to them if the roles were reversed. They live with that reality every single day. So keep your head up and stay aware of what's actually going on around you. That's going to do it for this one. This is OCD Jackson. Thank you all for watching and for everything you continue to support. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell, and we'll see you in the next one. As you can see in the footage, these young black men are simply going about their day, minding their business, and he walks right up to them. He starts throwing out slurs, using the N-word, and making references to phrases like chimping out, language that is deliberately dehumanizing and designed to provoke a reaction, because that's the entire strategy. get in someone's face, push them to their limit, and the moment they respond, film it, escalate it, and use it as content. He's had a surprising amount of success running this playbook without serious physical consequences, though we'll get into that in a moment. But first, I want to zero in on something that reveals a lot about his mindset. In a recent exchange, he wasn't even talking to a black person. He was speaking to an older white man with a southern accent, someone he clearly assumed would be sympathetic to him. And what was his complaint? He said he was being kept out of somewhere because he had used the N-word online, and his defense was freedom of speech. The older man's response was simple. He said 2 of his close friends are black, so no, he doesn't find it acceptable. He told him to move along. And that right there exposes a fundamental misunderstanding that keeps showing up in these far-right spaces. Freedom of speech, as protected under the First Amendment, is specifically about protecting citizens from government retaliation for criticizing or challenging those in power. It protects your right to speak against the government without being silenced or punished by the state. That is what the protection covers. It does not give you the right to direct hate speech at individuals or groups without consequence. Hate speech causes direct harm to real people, specifically protected communities, and depending on the context, the severity, and how frequently it occurs, it can and does result in termination of employment, civil penalties, and in some cases, criminal charges. That is not a violation of your rights. That is the law functioning as intended. The confusion between these 2 very different concepts, free speech and hate speech, is something people in these spaces deliberately exploit, but they are not the same thing, and one is not protected by the other. Now let's get into what happened at the gas station, because this is where things took a notable turn. Chud the builder pulled up to a gas station with no intention of buying anything. There were several black men there, some pumping gas, some grabbing items inside. He walked in and started doing what he always does, provoking, harassing, looking for a reaction to film. What he got was different this time. One of the men out there was a licensed carrier, and reports indicate that Chud the builder's own open carry permit had previously been revoked due to his ongoing legal issues stemming from prior harassment incidents. During the confrontation, one of the men walked up